afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. This afternoon, I am going to discuss about the task-based language learning. According to Wills 2007, task-based language learning offers an alternative for language teachers in a task-based lesson. This way of learning the language is student-centered because the lessons are based around the completion of a task, and the language studied is determined by what happens as students complete it. TBL, or the task-based language learning, seeks to develop students' interlanguage through providing a task and then using language to solve it. This also offers students to engage in communication in order to achieve goal or complete task. In task-based language learning, I will associate this with the Chinese proverb saying, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. Meaning, we need to do it ourselves for us to be able to understand the language and retain it in our mind, and so adds it in our vocabulary. The lessons in task-based language learning follows certain stages. The first one is the pre-task. When we say pre, it means before. So pre-task or before task. In this stage, the teacher introduces the topic and gives the students clear instruction on what they will going to do in the task. This stage might help the students recall some language that may be useful for the task. Meaning, this first task or this first stage will awaken the vocabulary of the students about a particular language, and they will going to use it in their current situation. The second stage is the task. The students complete the task in pair or groups using the language resources that they have as the teacher monitor and offers encouragement. In this stage, the students are going to perform the task given by the teacher. When we say task, it is a piece of classroom work that involves learners in comprehension, manipulation, producing or interacting in target language while attention is focused on meaning rather than form. Task also, according to Williams and Burden, 1997, is any activity that learners engage into process of learning a language. One of the examples of this is conducting an interview. One of the important things in interviewing is the language. With this, you will be able to develop the language or learn a new language. The third stage is the planning. Students will prepare a short oral or written report to tell the class what happened during the task. They will going to write down the steps they made and the challenges they faced to achieve the goal. The teacher must be available for the students to ask for advice to clear up any language questions about the new language they have acquired or learned. The next stage is the analysis. In the analysis, the students examine and discuss specific features. The teacher then highlights relevant parts of the text of the recording for students to analyze. Students are given opportunity to reflect and analyze the new language which has emerged through the task. In this stage, the students may will internalize the new learned language to store it in their mind. In the analysis, the students will going to analyze the particular words or the new learned language they have acquired during their task. In the analysis, the teacher will highlight the relevant part of the text so that the students will have a basis as to where or what part they were going to analyze. The next one is the report. The students will report to the class orally or in written form. They can present the reports to the class or exchange written reports and compare results. In the report also, the teacher may give feedback on the content, and at the same time, the teacher may play a recording of others doing the same task for the students to compare. In the reporting, in this stage, the students are going to tell or to say the process or the steps they have made in order to achieve their task or the doings they do during the task. The next one is the practice. This might be the last stage of task-based language learning. Students put the language acquired into practice. The students then do practice activities to increase their confidence and make a note of useful language. For example, the task of the students is to interview a tribe in the community. Basically, when we're interviewing a tribe, they are not speaking the language that you spoke. So, during the interview, you will learn new languages from their dialect, and then in order for you to retain it in your mind or store it in your vocabulary, you need to practice those words or the language that you have learned during your interview. Now let's proceed to the natural approach. Natural approach was developed by Chazzy Tarrell and supported by Stephen Krashen. This is based on Krashen's theory about the second language acquisition. Natural approach sees a difference between learning and acquisition. When we say acquisition, it is the natural way of learning the language, or you acquired it through a massive repetition of words or imitating the word, while learning is a conscious process in which conscious rules about language are developed. It requires language teaching. So the difference between acquisition and learning is that acquisition is you learned it naturally, or it doesn't require technicalities when it comes to the sentence or the grammar, while learning is it uses books and it requires a process in learning or developing the language. So a natural approach, a language teaching approach, which claims that language learning is the reproduction of the ways human naturally acquire their native language. This means that when a person learns a language naturally, it is considered as the natural approach, where no one taught him or her about the language. It is just about repeating what someone says and imitating it. Speech production comes slowly and is never forced in the natural approach, because when we say natural approach, it is the nature of how the person spoke, and it is not forced, because you cannot tell that person to do this, because that would not be considered as natural approach. The distinction of natural approach from other approaches are its premises concerning the use of language and importance of vocabulary. So one thing we'll remember when we say natural approach, the word itself is natural, that we learn the language by ourselves naturally, not through language teaching. The next one is the lexical approach. Is a method of teaching foreign languages described by Michael Lewis. Important part of language consists of being able to understand and produce lexical phrases as chunks. Vocabulary is prized over grammar per se in this approach. In the lexical approach, it focuses more on the technicalities about grammars and the use of words, because in this approach, you are taught about how to form a word, a sentence rather, what are the use of the words, and vocabulary is prized over grammar. So what you have in your vocabulary is more important than the grammar in this approach. In lexical approach also, students are taught to be able to perceive patterns of language, the grammar, as well as to have meaningful set uses of words as at their disposal when they are taught in this way. So that's all about the lexical approach. The next one is the grammar translation method. The grammar translation method was student-centered, and the main objective was to learn grammar rules and list of vocabulary. This method was based on the approach used to teach classical languages such as Latin. This method is used to teach dead languages such as Latin and Greek, involving little or no spoken communication or listening comprehension. So in the grammar translation method is that you are taught by dead language, for example, Latin, and the teacher will ask you to translate it into your language, and it should be grammatical, and it focused more on reading and writing skills because in the grammar translation method, the teacher will present dead languages and literature. For example, as what I have said earlier, for example, Latin words or Latin sentences, the teacher will present it to the class and ask the students to translate it in the language that you use in this time. This method also focuses on reading and writing skills since the communicative aspect was not considered important. So, meaning speaking here is not that important. The next method is the reform method. Industrialization and immigration increased the opportunities for communication among Europeans that created demand for oral proficiency in foreign languages. The reform movement or the reform method attempted to The reform movement method attempted to revolutionize methods for modern language instruction by teaching them as living language. The primary desire was not to throw what had been done before, rather the goal was to further help in the improvement of language teaching. In the reform movement, it is the way of evolving or revolutionizing the methods of teaching the language from the modern way of teaching it, from the old way of teaching it to the modern ways of teaching the language. Phonetics, the analysis and description of the sound system of language, was established during this time. The next one is the use of technology in English language teaching and learning. Technology infused classrooms with digital learning tools such as computer and handheld device. 21st century learners are more dependent on technology, as we all know. So technology by this time is infused in the classroom so that the students will understand clearly the topics, or they will able to understand the topic. Technology by this time is very much important, especially in teaching or learning the language, because it helps us to give to be more accurate on the pronunciation of the word or the correct usage of the word and also in learning it. So the next one is the blended learning system as a combination of face-to-face with computer mediated instruction according to Graham 2006. Blended learning is what we have applied in today's time, or in this time this trying time.